Did the first Flash, Jay Garrick, have his own Reverse Flash? The answer is sort of, but a lot of it's added in post the original story. However, at the same time, that first version may have served as a source of inspiration. What do I mean? Well, to explain that, we have to go back and take a look at The Rival, which is a great villain name. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and it's Golden Age time. Now, while The Rival has over time come to be identified as the Golden Age version of the Reverse Flash, or a Reverse Flash in a sense, he actually had a very small role at first, only appearing in one Golden Age story, and towards the very tail end of the Golden Age at that. The Rival debuted in Flash Comics 104 in 1949, which is significant because that was the last issue of Flash Comics. Now, Flash Comics was also an anthology book, so while Jay Garrick's adventures were housed there were other stories too. 104 also has a Hawkman story, Ghost Patrol, The Atom, and a Black Canary story. Years later, when the Silver Age Barry Allen would get his own Flash series, The Flash, which began in 1959, it would start off at issue 105, taking its numbering from the first Flash Comics series. As for issue 104, the second story was The Rival Flash, written by John Broome, with art by Carmine Infantino, and inks Bernie Sachs, and Julius Schwartz was around as editor. The creative team, hold on to it will matter. The Rival Flash has been reprinted a few times, and you can find a touched up version in the Flash 75th anniversary celebration. However, I will admit to a fondness for the original version because the update makes a lot of changes in terms of coloring and shading, and it's just very different and doesn't bring the same depth. However, it is nice that it's there and accessible. Now, another thing the reprint doesn't have is the little title blurb at the beginning that leads into the big title for the story, and that does a lot of setup, so let's read it. Against every threat of all his previous opponents, the Flash, the fastest man alive, always had one decisive weapon, his incredible speed. But in the strangest adventure of his career, the Flash finally met the one man who could meet him at his own game of speed and beat him. Here was an unknown criminal, more powerful than any other, who threatened to destroy law and order with speed. Here indeed was the Rival Flash. The story starts with a recap of the chemistry accident that caused Jay Garrick to become the Flash when he was laying there inhaling all those hard water fumes. But it also poses the question, what happened to those chemicals? Could there be more than one Flash? Was the experiment replicable? And also, does anybody know that Jay is the Flash? I've known Jay Garrick as the Flash for 8 years now, and I've never had the courage to tell him that I once told someone else of his dual identity. It was back in school. I was so proud of knowing that Jay was the Flash that I bragged a little to John Burns, who was in my math class. What do you mean you know how the Flash acquired his speed? Well, I think it's connected with the chemicals mixed in the lab explosion. I mean, it's not exactly coming out and shouting, Jay Garrick is the Flash, but it is leaving some clues, some breadcrumbs that could be followed. But Joan and her snatched waist feel that it's probably fine. Well, there's no point worrying now. I never really told John Burns anything more. I better hurry if I'm going to meet Jay at the reception for Dr. Clariss, our former chemistry teacher. At the pier where the SS Nautical is docking, they're running out of ship names. As head of the Garrick Research Foundation, let me welcome you, Dr. Clariss. We are anxious to hear more about your work with uranium-235. Certainly, Mr. Garrick. It's the Golden Age, so we don't need to worry about uranium-235. Radiation won't be able to solve/cause all problems till the 1950s and 60s in these stories. Now it just sometimes does things, but not that much. Dr. Clariss is kidnapped at this event, and suddenly a giant lightning bolt appears to threaten them. The lightning bolt is talking! Hear me, Keystone City, your beloved Flash who stupidly fights crime at last has a rival who can equal him. He is finished, and I have done it. I, the Rival. Just to make sure you really remember the name. Gotta say it a few times. Also, there's something just so basic about hearing the words stupidly fights crime that just adds to the insult. It makes it more hurtful, just straight to the point. At Joan's apartment, the Rival begins his crime career by kidnapping Dr. Clariss, as if to deliberately challenge the Flash to capture him, as if he knew I was the Flash. Well, maybe he does. What? Jay, I may as well confess something I haven't ever told you. What's really notable about this is despite the exclamation at the beginning, he's not really angry about this. Jay and Joan rarely get very upset with each other. They have a very healthy relationship, couple goals. What he is wondering though is if some of the hard water didn't explode, but what if it got stolen? Because there was an explosion and then the inhaling. Jay decides he'd better go check on this John Burns, who Joan was lightly clout flexing on. But he doesn't even remember and seems genuine. And on the way back from that, Jay is accosted by gangsters who have speed, the actual ability to go fast, not the drug. That'll come later. Wait for the Bronze Age for the speed. He's not able to outrun them or trick them by making himself appear in multiple places at once. They just hit all the apparitions at once. They say the Rival taught them how to do it, but that proves they have no courtesy, these Golden Age gangsters. They broke the one at a time code. The Rival will give us a bonus for Flash's capture. He'd better. We ain't been paid in weeks. Then why are they still working for him? What loyalty has he engendered and how? Later at a laboratory in the rival's hideout. And I'm telling you that we won't do any more jobs till we get some money. You may be in this for revenge, but we ain't. We want dough. Why attach to him then, especially if he's been so blatant about revenge? Although I'm not sure how the revenge is specific to the Flash, but we'll get to that. Very well. We'll rob the cash shipment being made at the Keystone Bank. Now quiet, Flash is awakening. As one can see, the rival has the Flash's costume, only it's darker, and his face is covered with a loose cloth mask in black that almost has an executioner's vibe. It's a little unsettling. So you're my rival? Is there any doubt that I have your gift of speed, Flash? But I'll use it for revenge on all the fools who laughed at me. As for you, Flash, I'm going to take away your title of the fastest man alive and give you another. The slowest man alive. He means slow in more ways than one, too. Because on top of having super speed, it's implied and at other points explicitly kind of stated that the Flash can think faster than other people. Not that he's necessarily smarter, but that he has the capacity to have thoughts pass through at a faster speed, and so he can solve problems a bit faster, learn things a bit faster. But the rival has Jay inhale some different hard water byproduct, and this makes him slow. We all gotta stay away from the hard water. Kids, hard water, not even once. Also, by that monologue, one should be able to tell that the rival is a scientist. Because of the phrase, the fools who laughed at me, the only other bigger tell would have been, they said I was mad. Like a proper villain, the rival doesn't stay to ensure success, and he did promise the gang some pay. Can they go and do some crime and get paid? They're tired of revenge crime. Won't the Flash escape? Not him. We'll be back by the time he has moved 12 inches away. I like this panel. It looks like he's giving a thumbs up. Jay is able to slowly gather his thoughts and move across the room. He knocks over some more of those chemicals and inhales that, and that helps him go fast again. I'm just laughing because my brain has been warped by too many drug references, and so that's what I'm thinking of every time they're going over and just inhaling and holding all these chemicals. But this helps him recover his senses. And the Flash realizes that, wait a minute, Dr. Clariss isn't in this lair, and he was kidnapped by the rival, wasn't he? And Jay is about to ruin these gangsters' day because they're not gonna get paid because he stops the bank robbery. How? But the slowdown gas. It's a long story. I'll tell you all about it when you're in jail. Now, we learned during this fight that these Flash's powers aren't like Jay's. They're temporary. They didn't have enough hard water. It's not the right type of hard water. They cut it with something else. There's a funny moment before the end where the rival tries to make Jay feel bad about beating him with super speed because he no longer has any. So Jay just punches him at regular speed and it still knocks him out. And now for the big reveal. It was Dr. Clariss. And he would have gotten away with it if he hadn't for some reason decided to specifically target the Flash. He had overheard Joan telling John that she potentially knew how the Flash's powers came about. So he went to go and see if any of that formula was still around, still intact. He wanted to go fast. The chemical contained hard water. It quickly deteriorated. But after further experimenting, I knew I had a formula almost as good to increase human speed amazingly. You're crazy. Don't bother us with your silly experiments. All right, someday you'll see. Nobody would listen, so I went to Europe, where I became famous for other scientific work, but not for my hard water formula. I was bitter about it and planned revenge. You're all treated with my speed formula. Now return to America and plan my kidnapping so no one will suspect that I am the rival. They came all the way from Europe and he hasn't paid them? I have so many questions. This is the story I want filled in. Why were these gangsters working for him? Also, there's some interesting psychology there that even though he's become famous, world renowned for other things, it's not enough. It has to be the hard water. It has to be the one thing that people don't believe. He's obsessed with it. Obsessed with people understanding. I'm not sure how becoming a criminal and defeating the Flash is going to get to that goal, but it's where he ended up. Maybe too much hard water. Now, the police are still curious. Who is the Flash? This story's got them intrigued. Have you any idea who the Flash is, Clariss? A student, naturally. Here it comes. Probably someone who sneaked into the lab right after Jay Garrick was taken to the hospital. He got the right formula. I was too late. Thank goodness nobody in these universes assumes the obvious. The Flash, Jay Garrick, preposterous. And then Joan writes a bunch of lines in a joke ending to promise she'll never sort of reveal who the Flash is again. She assigned herself the lines, don't worry. And that was it for the rival. His story was reprinted in the Flash 211, but as for original rival appearances, he wouldn't pop up again until post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was in 1985. And even then, decades after that. Now, the rival Flash is a fun little story, but there is some connective tissue missing in terms of motivation and why specifically he latches on to the Flash when his main gripe is that people don't believe his scientific formula. There's a bit of a leap there in terms of how he got from A to B. We just need the thread of something like the Flash knows the formula and is hogging it for himself. But the concept of there being this other Flash, equally matched to Jay, but who has a different moral compass, that's something that had some legs. In terms of this story, there's a nice little misdirect from it being a student to it being Dr. Clariss, and the whole slowest man alive bit is a tad suspenseful, even though we all know the slowest man alive would have no chance against the Flash. I'm sorry, Turtle Man. That was the first villain who Barry Allen's Flash fought, the Turtle Man. He's so slow, the slowest man alive. But there is something else to note here. A lot of what is here can be seen as being repurposed or kind of recontextualized for the Flash 139, the first appearance of the Reverse Flash, which has the same creative team minus the inker as this book. Same writer, same artist, same editor. The Silver Age's Flash Reverse Flash also wears a similar costume to the main Flash that's been lightly twisted. In that case, the colors are flipped rather than darkened. The Reverse Flash also judges the Flash for fighting crime. It annoys him, although that story focuses much more on the idea that he's some kind of inverse Flash. They use reverse, but there are so many other words that would make a bit more sense than reverse. People always joke that he should go backwards or he should be slow. The Turtle Man's already got that covered. The slow, not the backwards. There's still room for someone who goes backwards. Looking at the two stories, one could speculate that some of these ideas were indeed taken for Eobard Thawne. Because part of the Silver Age, for the heroes that were reimagined as new characters, there were things from the Golden Age that carried on. For example, the final Green Lantern oath is one of the oaths that Alan spoke back in the Golden Age. We've been talking a lot about Green Lantern, it's on my mind. Now, of course, Eobard Thawne would go on to become a much bigger deal than the rival. It helps that he got to appear much more, but also his pathos, his obsession with Barry, and just how unhinged he could get would really cement him as a danger to the Flash and an iconic villain. Not only would he himself go up against Wally West, but later comics would also try and give Wally his own version of the Reverse Flash in the form of Hunter Zolom and Zoom. So it's not surprising that when the rival came back, it's kind of contextualized as a prototypical Reverse Flash. And in some ways, he may have been. The idea of Flash facing an equally matched moral opposite, as mentioned, is there. But the personal connection as to why he wants to harm the Flash isn't really, and they're going to try and create it in the newer era. And miles will vary as to whether or not it fully lands. They try to add on the idea that there always was this intense personal edge to their history. In the aughts, under Jeff Johns and David S. Goyer in the JSA, the rival is first brought back, and unequivocally identified as some kind of Reverse Flash. While you kind of see him in issue 8 in the year 2000, he becomes a proper character again in issue 16 during the Injustice Be Done storyline. And he's got a very Reverse Flash personality by this point. The wanting to prove scientific superiority is gone. The harming people because they didn't believe him. They should have made him famous for the hard water. Now he's just bloodthirsty and obsessed with Jay. He's murdering his way across the country at super speed, spelling his own name. Here's my chemistry professor back at Midwestern University. In 49, he somehow managed to duplicate the hard water formula that gave me my super speed. Look at that beautiful editor's note. Back in Flash Comics 104. For a brief period of time, he took on the identity of rival. A kind of Reverse Flash hell-bent on destroying me. There was some question of whether or not he discovered my identity. There wasn't, but that's one of the things that's changed for this retelling. He's de-aged, as one can see, and this version is presenting whether or not he knew it was Jay or not as a question, that it then comes forward and presents the idea that, yeah, he did. He figured out it was Jay. They also had another encounter where he escaped from prison and got his powers back somehow, and then he got trapped in the Speed Force, which is to explain his absence in between the gap of years. Although the Speed Force was not a thing in the 40s and really only became a thing in the 90s, which is hard to imagine because it's become such a prominent part of Flash lore at this point. All of that is there to explain how he returned. He's also there because in this storyline, key villains are going up against their matching heroes. So the rival can then slot into that position fairly nicely, especially because by the time this was written, most readers would be familiar with the Reverse Flash, aka Professor Zoom, aka Zoom. So the idea that Jay would have his own Reverse Flash wouldn't have been too much of a leap. In this story, the rival is going after Joan, because this time it's personal. And they get to have one of those speed fights that the Flashes are famous for. Why are you doing this, Edward? Why kill innocents? No one is innocent, Jay, least of all you. You left me trapped in the Speed Force, but my powers were temporary. Damn you, when they disappeared, the Force ate me alive. You forgot about me, Jay. But I never forgot you. And in this story, Jay ends up absorbing some of him because the rival is kind of pure energy or mostly energy. And then Jay manages to get out and the rival is still trapped in the Speed Force. And for a while there, that Jay's kind of out of sync, but he gets better. Until the Impulse series, where the rival gets out and masquerades as Joan's doctor, as seen in issues 88 and 89. This almost drives Jay to kill. So again, we get a bit of that repeat of the Barry and Eobard dynamic because Barry was driven to kill the Reverse Flash, even though later retcons say that it was different things. It was a sudden stop. He snapped his own neck. Now, the rival got out because he managed to get into Max Mercury's body, and Max Mercury's essence was trapped in the Speed Force until Flash Rebirth in 2009, which is different than the Rebirth of 2016. Stop using the same names for things, DC, please. It was a pretty rage-inducing outing, though. The rival was planning to give Joan painful and unnecessary cancer treatment to make her die just an excruciating death. The blocky, fun art style does not often showcase how hard some of these early aughts books could go. The Impulse series went places. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten the Impulse series. Did you read the Impulse series? There was also the JSA All-Star series where the rival was just there as a member of the Injustice Society. And as of Rebirth, so post New 52, in the Flash 750, he was said to have fought against the rival again back in the day. You see him in the background of people that he's fought. So in general, there was a period of expansion in terms of the importance and prominence of the rival. And in that period, it's where it stated that he is the Golden Age Reverse Flash. And looking back at it, one can see why he was contextualized in that way. Now, while as mentioned, it makes sense to categorize him like that, some of those new outings feel a bit more like retreads of territory already covered by the Reverse Flash, or his motivations, because they're following such similar lines, feel a bit less unique. Although, trapped and forgotten in the Speed Force is a pretty good reason to lose it. There's a menace to the original design that they attempt to recreate in the more modern outings by having him more shadowed. 750 gets pretty close to it, but the Golden Age has just this kind of general darkening. That's probably why 750 gets so close. It's almost like he's shadowed. He's a bit more purple in some of the aughts outings. And also, the name is great. I would argue the rival is a much stronger name than the Reverse Flash, whose strength is garnered much through character than through his name, because some people use different ones interchangeably. It's really interesting to see how those early beginnings may have influenced the creation of the Reverse Flash, whom the rival later becomes slightly derivative of. That cyclical nature of comics and their inspirations and just the tapestry that's woven. The stories where the rival shows up are strong ones. Personally, I have a special fondness for the Golden Age one, and not just because it's the first. There's a simplicity to it that just makes it a fun one and done little adventure. It just doesn't have the strongest motivation for that version of the rival to really appear again. Now, the most memorable outing may be the Impulse story. It's just so over the top, and you rarely see Jay push that far. The CW series certainly got some use out of the concept of the rival as well, but that series ran so long it had to use pretty much everything. So I'm curious, what do you think of the rival? Time of recording, because you never know. Maybe someone's gonna bring him back. DC All In is playing a lot with characters and concepts from past eras, so who knows? Maybe it'll be the rival's time again and he'll be completely different, and this time he's gonna outshine everyone. Do you think that he works as the ultimate antagonist for Jay, or does that render him too close to the Reverse Flash, who follows and arguably outshines him? Do you like the rival's design? Do you want more stories? What would you do if you brought him back? Do you want to bring back that jaded scientist angle? They should have listened. Your thoughts, I want to hear them. Please leave them down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things like share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. People pointed out that over the years I've started talking faster and faster. I don't know when that happened. Maybe I'm the Flash. Maybe it's too much hard water. See you again soon. Bye.